Hi, my name is Mike Fry, Director of Instruction here at Westbrook Village Golf Club. Today we're going to be talking about keeping your head down. In today's video, we're going to be talking about keeping your head down, keeping your head still, don't lift your head. Any of those tips you hear on a daily basis that involve something to do with your head moving improperly. These are all my least favorite tips, and it's because your head is basically just a passenger to your golf swing. If you're moving your head improperly, or if your head is moving all over the place, it's probably because you're doing something below your head, such as the way you move your hips, or something to do with how you're transferring weight, or any number of things below your head that is resulting in your head moving in a certain way. So, number one, I want to get across that your head is just a passenger to your golf swing. So if you're trying to address any issue in your swing with something that has practically nothing to do with your swing, it's a very counterproductive way to address a problem. The second reason I want to bring this to everybody's attention is I see this tip not only being said all the time, but probably misinterpreted, more importantly, all the time. And so what ends up happening is people that are newer to golf, a lot of times they'll come out, and the only tips that they've heard at that point are, you got to keep your head down, you got to keep your head still. Almost to the point where they think that's the only thing important in a golf swing, to the point where they take that to the extreme, where they're making a swing where they take their swing back and they don't let their head move at all. So whatever happens, as long as they keep their head still or don't move their head or whatever you want to say, you know, they think they've succeeded at what they're doing. And so when they're making their swing back, they're not getting used to what their feet should be feeling on the ground. They're not getting used to what their hips should be doing. They're not getting used to their shoulders moving, because a lot of these things can't move if we're so fixated on not letting this head move. And that's just the backswing. So when you're coming back through and you're making your swing, the thing that I probably see way too often, I wish I never saw it, was people making a swing and just kind of folding up past the ball. You can tell just by the way they're moving, because it's such an unnatural movement, their head isn't moving at all, and they're making this swing, and they might make contact with it, but they're missing out on a whole bunch of power or any real nice thing that you could do in your swing. They're missing out on a lot of those things because they're so fixated on just keeping that head as still as physically possible, and it just really doesn't do anything positive towards you learning how to play golf better. And what I'd like to do today is shift your focus from focusing on what your head is doing and focusing on things below your head that are actually very important, that might result in your head not moving excessively. But even then, I don't want to be thinking about our head. I want to make some better movements, anything below your head. Your head is just such an unimportant part of your swing. What is important, and the reason that tip did become, like I said, became so widespread and so used, is that early extension or loss of posture is a very, very common problem in a golf swing. So when you look at a video, somebody's head might be bobbing up and down or moving excessively, but it has a lot to do with that early extension or loss of posture. And what I mean by that is when we take our swing, we're set up, we're bending from our hips, we've got this posture established, and when we move, a lot of golfers, especially newer golfers, a lot of this has to do with flexibility and strength in your hamstrings and a whole bunch of stuff like that. But what ends up happening is this early extension I'm talking about, when we move back, we've lost that posture. As you can see, my posture is now different than where it started. I lost my posture. And when you look at that in a video, you'd see my head went up. So it's an easy thing to communicate, it just doesn't capture what the problem actually is. What it generally is misunderstanding what our shoulders are doing, what our hips are doing, or what our feet are doing. So what I'd want to point out is when I move back, when I made that swing, my head probably didn't move a whole lot as far as what you'd be seeing from the perspective of the camera. But if I was making my real swing, my nose is not pointing at the ball. My nose is actually somewhat back here. That allowed me to make this bigger turn with my shoulders. And then when I come back through, I want to maintain that plane with my shoulders. I want to learn how to use my hips and everything. And again, if you were to watch my head probably didn't move a whole lot in the picture. And then when I come through to this point, my head, as far as this level is concerned, it probably hasn't moved a whole lot in the video. But where I was saying before that a lot of people misinterpret this whole thing is they get the idea that your head can never move, never rotate, never move at all. and then they lose this ability to actually make a proper follow through. You make that a couple times, and then you start learning some bad habits to make that a little more comfortable to do. That I think a chicken wing, if everybody has seen somebody make a swing where they have a chicken wing, I think this is a direct result of trying to keep your head still. If I know that I can't move my head, that's a really easy option to me to not move my head. It's not productive towards hitting a good golf shot, but it is if your goal again is to not move your head, which is again why I don't like that as a tip. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about how to address those things that are actually important, such as your shoulders, your hips, and your feet. And I'm going to give you a drill for each of those things so you can shift your focus away from using your head as your focal point of your swing and start actually addressing the things that do influence making a better golf swing. So the first drill we're going to talk about is going to focus mostly on what your shoulders are doing. It's not to say that you might not feel some things below your shoulders, such as the way your hips move or the way your feet are moving as you're doing this drill, but we're focusing on what the shoulders are doing throughout this drill. So the way we have this drill set up is if you were to imagine you're going to hit a shot with your 7-iron, so we're going to be using our 7-iron for this drill. So if I was to take my address, I bend from my hips and get into my, hopefully a good posture from my hips. At that point, what I'm going to do is I've already have the ball set up, but what this ball is set up to be is one 7-iron away from the ball that I would be hitting. So I'd have a ball set up here just in line with me. So I take that back, right? I've got this set up, and I'm going to bring this club up to my shoulders. And what I'd like you to do is have the grip side on your left shoulder if you're a right-handed golfer, or opposite if you're left-handed golfer. But from that point, make sure you bend from your hips, get that nice tilt here, because we're trying to establish that posture that I was talking about earlier. So when I go back, we're going to try to point that grip side right at that other ball that we had set up. So not at the one that I'm going to hit, but the one that's a 7-iron away from the one that I would be hitting if in a normal situation. So that's your backswing. We're trying to get used to moving here. And what you notice here is that, right, even if you might even be saying, well, your head's not moving a whole lot. Well, that's kind of the point of today's video, is we can get your head not to move a whole lot, but by focusing on things that actually are relevant to making a good golf swing. This just happens to be one of them. We're learning how to move our shoulders better. We're keeping a better plane with our shoulders. Okay, other thing you might notice, my hips have moved. Other thing you might notice, or if you're doing this drill, you might feel something different in your feet. Our feet are very important in our golf swing, and you might start picking up on those things as you're doing this drill. But number one thing you're gonna do is you're gonna get this drill set up, and you're gonna take your shoulders back. You're gonna be focusing on what your shoulders are doing. You're gonna point that grip end at that ball. That's not the end of the drill, but that's the backswing portion of the drill. Once you get that part down, we're gonna learn how to make the other side of the swing. So what we have to do is we're gonna imagine as if there's a laser pointer coming out of this side. As we come back down, we're gonna make that hit that other ball again. So just like I had before, where I had the grip end pointing at that other ball, I'm gonna be imagining that I've got a laser pointer coming out of the shaft here, and I'm gonna point it at that ball again. Keep in mind, this is not the end of your golf swing, but this is a really nice way to learn how your shoulders move in a golf swing. And this will be a great drill for you to learn one of those things I was talking about, something below your head that gets you moving a lot better. It's gonna help you out as far as, keeping that swing a lot more consistent. So this next drill, we're gonna be focusing more on a concept related to your hips. You can use this as a drill if you'd like. It's something you can do in your house. But it's just a drill where it's just a barrier for your hips. And what that is when I set up to the ball and I get in, I always make sure we get into golf posture. We're bending from our hips. When I make my backswing, in a perfect world, if I make a really nice motion, I would actually be establishing a barrier. In a real swing, it'd be an imaginary one, but for what we're doing right now, you can actually use a barrier, but this would be the barrier. So when I go into my swing, I'm trying to learn how to move my hips, and I do want to move them. I definitely want to move them, but I don't want to run into this barrier that I've established here. And then when I come back through, I'd be trying to learn how to use my hips again, where I do not go into this barrier. So if in your house, you've got a table or you've got a chair or something, or a couch or something, you can kind of get up relatively close to and start making these motions where you don't run into that barrier. And then you're making that swing back through, and you're not running into that barrier again. And it's just a good concept to learn how your hips are moving. If you go back to the drill that I showed you before with your shoulders, you'd probably find that your hips didn't actually, or they shouldn't have, went outside of this imaginary barrier. And so what you could do is, you can any number of ways, but if you're just trying to get the idea, you can hold an imaginary barrier here and just get the idea of making that swing. Take your dominant hand, your right hand, and just kind of get used to how your hips are moving without running into that barrier. Once you've kind of done that a few times, right, you can kind of transition that to just kind of holding the club out in front of you. Always make sure we're getting into that golf posture, bending from our hips. We're making that swing back, just kind of making an imaginary motion as if you're taking the club with just that one hand. Again, focusing on not letting this hip go into that imaginary barrier we just established. And then we're going to come back through, and we're going to try to get the feeling of how we move those hips without it running into that barrier. So that's a great way to either think about or use as a drill to learn how to use those hips better. So this last drill, we're going to be talking about your feet. So your feet are really, really important in a golf swing because everything is above your feet. I mean, your feet are what attach you to the ground. So everything you do, whether it's with your hips or your shoulders, are directly related to what you're going to feel on the ground. So a lot of times we can get a lot of these feelings correct just by getting a better idea what our feet are doing. And so in this drill, it's not the only drill we can do with our feet, but it's the one I want to focus on based on that early extension that I was talking about. And specifically, it'd be early extension on your downswing would be what this drill would be addressing. And so what we're going to do is we're going to focus on our trail foot. And for a right-handed golfer, this is your right foot. So when we make a swing, what we're going to do first, we're always going to do these drills. We're going to get into our golf posture. We want to get a nice bend from our hips. And at that point, we're going to make a backswing. And what I want you to do now is we're going to start thinking about what our right foot is going to do. So we're going to start our downswing. And what your goal is by the time you get to the ball with this drill, if you can see what happened to my right foot, the outside of my right foot has actually come off the ground. Almost the entire inside of my foot is on the ground. I've just kind of tipped it up this way. The way that I got that to happen was this hip actually cleared out of here, creating a situation where this foot basically, or this leg basically isn't long enough to be on the ground anymore. The way I want you to be trying to do this is get the entire inside of that foot on the ground, the entire outside of that foot off the ground. And it'll just give you a different sensation through that impact area of what you're going to feel in your legs and specifically in this drill in your feet. So when you make that, you might feel something a little different in your swing. Just get the idea. That's only up until impact. That foot's actually going to eventually come off the ground at least that much. If you're making a bigger finish, it'll come all the way off the ground, where all that's on the ground at that point is the toe of that foot. So again, today's focus is trying to get those, if our goal is to make a more efficient golf swing and learn how to, do these things, we don't want to focus on the passenger of the swing, which is your head. We want to focus on the things that are directly related to making a better golf swing. And today I just used 3 examples of using your feet or your hips or your shoulders as the way to make those better motions. You should find if you get these drills down, they are making a more efficient motion, and you might just find that your head isn't moving nearly as much as it was if you've seen a video of yourself in the past and that was something you didn't like about your swing. Learning these things might just result in your head not moving very much. I just don't want to focus on that as the main focal point of what you're trying to accomplish in your swing, because like I said before, it isn't important because it's not related to you making a swing, really. Number one, and then number two, I just see it misinterpreted all the time, to the point where somebody gets the idea that not moving your head at all is the goal of a golf swing. It is certainly not. Pretty much your entire body is moving throughout a golf swing. Yeah, we want to make it efficient, but focusing on what your head is doing is not how you're going to accomplish that.